Hey watercolor class, this is Miss Fairfield. We're getting ready to do our wonderful little tulip picture here. This photo will be in your reference. I did have a couple of students ask about boards, and this is a self-healing board that you can use for crafts or for sewing and whatnot. And this is my daughter's start of a watercolor that she's doing on there. This is foam board, and it comes in the the back of frames or different things. You can use a stiff cardboard as long as it's not thin and going to be all lumpy and stuff like that. So you don't have to have one of the boards like I have in class. There are a lot of different things that you can use to paint your watercolor on. So let's get your paints and your brushes and get started. All right, class, this is the watercolor tulip that we're getting ready to do for our class project this week. I did get it off of Pixabay. And we have beautiful photographs for artists to use in their paintings and drawings and whatnot. I am going to make a few minor adjustments. This orange and these colors are so close to the same value, and I want to push the background farther back. Then I'm going to use this kind of color more in here and not the bright orange, and leave the bright orange so that this flower really stands out. And that's the only little adjustment I'm going to make. And we're going to get started and start right in with the colors that you all have on your palettes and stuff. So first off, I'm going to wet my colors. You're going to put just a tiny bit. You have a spritzer bottle. You can also spray those. I don't want to spray right over this, so I'm just going to, I just sprayed the length there, and we're going to get started with our flower. Well, maybe, there we go. We always put in the lightest color that you see, and we're going to leave out any areas that are absolutely white. These are the same brushes I was giving out with supplies at school Monday. If you missed that, we're going to be back up there next Monday from 10 to 12 only. So if you need something, just give me a holler so I'll know if and when anybody is coming, what time you would prefer. So we're going to work on each one of these sections at a time. And so I'm going to wet with my little bit larger brush the largest petal. And you want it really wet. So I like to work the water into the surface of the paper a little bit so it stays wet, so I can float that paint around and do a little bit of line work inside of the first initial wash. And when I say line work, it's going to be these little bit darker lines here within the photograph. All right. So we're going to start with this lightest yellow color. It is very, very light. So we're just going to put that lightest color in. And there's a hair on the end. There we go. There's still a hair on the end. And you can move this color around as much as you want while the paper is still wet. Now I've gone into my little bit orangier color yellow. That's the cadmium deep color that you have. And you'll notice that the outside of the flower is a little bit darker than the front side of the flower. So I'm going to just be putting that in, following the contours very carefully. And I'm also going to put some of it to make those stripes. And right here in the indentation of the flower here at the top, that's where those stripes are going to be. And I don't want them to be, so prominent or whatever. I'm not going to go back in and paint them like super, super dark. But I am going to I want them to be kind of a softer look to them. So I'm going to draw those in. And this area here in shadow will be painted later at a different time. So that's going to be our first wash for this petal, and we'll come back with an orange wash, and then we'll come back with the shadow. So we're just going to jump on over to the next petal. I'm going to use my little bit larger brush to put the water in here. And this is just clean water. Make sure you have a dirty water and a clean water while you're working. And if it gets dirty, then, you know, go take the time to go dump it out. It's not... it's not worth the hassle of trying to clean up a painting. Might as well do it well. So I'm putting in the lighter color on this piece. I'm kind of pushing the color to the outer edge slowly. And then the more orangey color, yellow, comes from this little dotted lines as well. And then all the rest of this is shadow as well. Now these two are still wet, so if I painted this, anything that would be in there would blur out. So I'm going to go to the tiny little parts at the top, and that's this petal and this petal, and I'm going to do the one on the right first. I'm just going to dampen that. Kind of work up the tooth of the paper a little bit and get it ready to receive that color. That's the lightest yellow. All right, class, sorry about that. We are back. And I'm going to grab my eyes here. And I'm going to go ahead and paint in the last of these little ones. And you don't have to completely water it down when it's just a tiny, tiny little section. So that's going to drive me nuts if I don't get that off of there. And because you're just going to pretty much leave that wet enough because it's such a small area. You don't really have to worry about that. And then as it goes down into the flower, it's a little bit darker. And on the other side, it is a lot darker here. So we're going to come back in and put that in while it's still wet. Ooh, it's drying. Okay. So now we're going to go for the big one. And actually, I'm going to give this just a little bit more time to dry. So I'm going to go jump down here to the stem. And for the stem, I'm probably going to use my flat brush. So I can follow the lines very easily. This works well with a round brush as well. So whatever you happen to have is what you're going to be using, and either one of them will work well. And I'm going to choose the light sap green, which is the brighter of the greens. And then we're going to fill that in. And we're going to shadow it up underneath. The tulip comes round, and so on the top of the stem here, and I want to use a little phthalo blue and along with the dark yellow, and it makes this really dark, beautiful green. And we're going to put that in the top while it's still wet. You should have plenty of time. You can always make up your colors first and then put it down. And you'll notice in the middle of the stem, it's darker than both sides because the light is wrapping around the stem. So we're going to put that darker color down the center. And I'm just going to spread that a little bit more while it's still wet, so that I have a really nice deep tone. And I probably will come back with a little bit of brown in this area as well, and get the make it look really, really dark. But you don't want to add that now because it'll just dull the green color. So one wonderful thing about watercolors is they're transparent, and you can see the layers in between each other. So we're going to get that going. So I'm going to go back to the larger round and go ahead and wet the largest petal here with our clean water. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Whoops, touched the green, but that's okay because there is a little bit of green in the bottom of the tulip here, and so to have that happen, it's no big deal. None whatsoever. As a matter of fact, you could probably encourage it along a little bit to do that. Once again, we're going to start with our lightest yellow. And the one in the middle is a little bit more orange than the ones that you can see the light through them. So I'm going to mix a combination of the two yellows to make a new color. And I'm just going to drop that in all over that. Mix it in with that green, which I like to do. Now in this middle one, there are lines kind of coming down the center stroke that are lighter than the petal in the top part. And then they're darker in the petal as it comes farther down. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. All right, here we go. This hopefully is still wet enough for me to do some little lines that are going to come from the bottom this way And notice at the top, they're lifted off. So we're going to take those out and we're going to paint those in. Now, I can't go back in with just this color. I mean, you can, but it's just not going to be as dark as you want it. And we're going to paint 2 lines all the way down. Yeah, it's not too bad. You can always add just a touch of red. That's what I'd planned on doing. And you want your cad red. That's the orangier red. And you're mixing just a tad bit of it in just so that you get this little bit redder orange, right? And while it's still wet, you're going to soften up any extra lines so it's not super fuzzy on the edges. Some of the green kind of got mixed in, so we're just going to put a little bit more of that in there. And then in the lighter part, I am probably not going to completely lift those off just yet. And you want a really smaller haired brush to lift out of just this top section. A little bit lighter. You want it to be somewhat yellow. There is not any actual white. This is definitely a very kind of a peachy color. So this is where the dark lines are going to meet that shadow that comes across the entire petal there. So with that said, this has dried so much lighter. You know how I always say that watercolor dries lighter, and we're definitely going to need to darken that back up. So I'm going to put another layer of color over that, what we already have. It's still a little bit damp. You can see the paper is bulged, so I don't have to completely just wet it. I can just do a wash of color throughout the entire petal. And I'm trying just to touch that line so one color doesn't bleed into another. If that green bleeds into that petal, that's okay, because there is green at the bottom of that one. All right, so we've got the basic washes for this particular. I am going to put just a little bit more, re-wet that stem, or I'm going to end up with a harsh line right here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of color to this. I'm going to wet my brush. It still has some color in it. And do it even a little bit more. Get that kind of gradation effect so it looks darker up underneath the tulip. And get those greens going in there. All right, well, this is the first step of our watercolor. Now we're going to need to dry it and come back and do some of the shadows that are within the color. I'll see you in just a minute. All right, class, we are going to put in this bright orange all in through the middle here. But if you can tell on the right and the left of the flower, these parts are kind of grayed down. So you can add a touch of brown or whatever, but red and green are opposite on the color wheels. We're already using green. If we add a little bit of green to that orange, we're going to get that somewhat neutral tone, but we don't want to make it, we don't want to make a mud color. So let's not get it too dark. So here we go with our orange. We're going to mix some of the Cad Red or Scarlet Lake if you have it. I don't know what colors you guys have with our deep Cad Yellow Deep. This is going to make us a nice, beautiful orange. And I'm going to get the excess off of there. Clean off your brush before you go to the water. You just dirty your water really fast. And then we're going to have a damp brush. It's not drippy, but damp. And we're going to pull a little bit of that out, filling up our brush. We don't want thick paint on a transparent piece. And we really want this tulip to really look transparent. So I'm going to add a little bit of the orange to the top piece up here. That's a little wet. So I'm going to spread that up into the top part just a little bit because it's very orange on that side. And then as this color comes down into this one, it comes down this way. There is like a little line there. And then it comes past these way over like this. And this is where we're going to paint the rest of the orange in. And we're just going to stay in this middle one and these top two little bitty ones for now. And we're just putting in a light wash of that color. As long as it's wet, you're not going to end up with any harsh lines. Make sure your brush stays damp. Each time I move, you're going to see me going back to the trough, the water, and then back to some paint in order to paint this wash on top of everything that I already have. And you can see that since this paper was completely dried, in between, you can still see the stripes somewhat. And we're going to add that orange layer, and that's the light kind of shining through. And this is going to help you to see how much darker this area is going to need to be in order for it to, kind of all fit together. We're going to put a little bit up this side. And then I'm just going to soften the edge. This is just a little bit of damp brush. And get that part softened. It's pretty much gone back to the same color. So I'm going to drop, while it's still wet, a little bit more in there. And refine that part there. Okay, so now I'm going to take the same color that we had and I'm going to gray it down, but I don't want to lose all of this orange. So I'm going to take up some of the orange and I'm going to add it to the green that we had just by adding a little bit. See how it's turned this darker color? And you could always add a little bit more brighter. And what you're looking for is this dull color here and here. So that's going to come in right in here. Comes over like this. And then down around the bottom. Fills in this whole space. Try not to touch the wet surface on the other petal at this point. And we can always come back and draw this little bit of a line in there. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So this goes way up here at the top. And it comes down, makes this kind of melon shape. Go back to our mixture of two tones. May not have enough green in it. It looks pretty bright. And we're going to stay right there on that line. go. Picking up just a little bit of this orange. This should definitely be in more orange color down here. And soften that edge up. There we go. So we get just that little bit of orange in there. Now we're also going to add the orange with a little bit of the lemon yellow on the lighter side of this petal, which is right next to this dark space. We're going to put in a little bit orangier tone. It might be a little too bright. And while we've got that wet, we can put in the green tones that are on the outside. This. And that's this tone out here on the outer edge. So I can get a little bit of that. It's gotten very brown. Let's add a little bit more green to it while it's still wet. If it has dried, you need to let it completely dry or go blow dry it with a hairdryer and then come back in and put that in. This same color is right here along this line. Whoops, way too much water. Watercolor is all about controlling the water, right? See if we can get that again. And right in here. It also comes along the top. So we're just putting in these tiny little bitty blends of color. And now for this top part, it is very peachy color. Almost has a touch of red to our orange. So we're going to go back to our redder orange that we had. And we're going to water it down. So I'm just adding a little bit of water to it in order to fill in the peachier colors. Oh, not enough water. There we go. I'm going to spread that color out because it's too dark right there. This is the light, where the light is hitting the sun is reflecting into the petals and making them look almost see-through, you know, like I don't want a harsh line down the center, so I'm softening that line, spreading that out. Then I'm going to pick up some more of that. Okay. I don't know what that black was. Look how dark it got. So there was a couple of drops of something. I don't know. So we're going to go back to this one. It is all over that. Okay. Don't know what that came from. We will clean that out later. Let's get us a little bit more. There's some right there, whatever this is. I'm going to water it way down till we get our peachy color like that. And we're going to come in to this side, which is even lighter than the other side, but not quite that light. There we go. I'm going to soften that edge on both sides. And across the top, right along the line of where I had my original drawing, I'm going to go back into this kind of grayed green color. And that is this little bit of color here across the top. Now, if you want to, you can actually, you know, kind of make a purpley color. Would look really pretty there too. It does kind of look purpley in the... A little bit of a red tone, maybe. Yeah, that's going to be better. There we go. Now, while looking at this, I can definitely tell that my shadow isn't near dark enough. So I'm probably going to do one more wash over the entire shadow all throughout the center spot, and go ahead and add the different colors in the background and do those kind of things to have a better look of look at how much darker I need to make it, or how much more I might need to lift out, or, you know, whatever I need to do there. Because this is looking really green. And this is where, you know, I'm always telling you guys, just look at the reference photo and see where you need to make adjustments. So in that area, I would probably just use the yellows. We're mixing the two yellow colors together, and add that brightness to this petal back in to where it looks like it can kind of be seen through, as it was getting a little grayed. Remember, you're not through with the picture until you're completely happy with it. So, and you can always be making more and more and more adjustments. So I'm going to make, using the Cad Red and the Golden. It's actually, this is Cad Yellow Deep. It's not the Golden, but whatever. And I'm going to make up quite a bit so that I can go over this entire section one more time. Because it is pretty dark. Do you see this section here? It's pretty dark. So I'm just going to do a wash over the entire thing. It's pretty dry. And you'll still be able to see a little bit of the green through the green section. You'll be able to see a little bit of the yellow through the yellow sections, and you'll be able to see the stripes a little bit. If you have unable to work like really quickly, then you want to wet that surface first and then come back in and do this if you didn't get it dark enough to begin with. But you do need to work pretty quickly so you don't end up with lines or other Look at the beauty of that orange. So gorgeous. As long as you're going in the direction of the tulip, if any of your paint lines show, that's not a big deal. It's going to look like they're parts of the stripe of the tulip themselves. So Putting a few in on purpose just to let you see what I'm talking about. All right. All right, we're going to have to let this dry again, and we'll come back in and put in our background. Okay, I was thinking that was a little too orange, so I went ahead and just wet the surface with just water while that orange was still wet, and then went back over and lifted a little bit out of this color, so it's not quite as strong of an orange. And I still want to make this more orange here. A little bit across the top and down. And then soften those edges. Adding a little bit of the orange on this side. Kind of take that dull green back a little bit. You just keep building your layers. Watercolor is all about these transparent, beautiful layers. These lines here, where it bled from this into the semi-wet space, can be taken out after it is completely dry. So I'm going to go blow this dry one more time, and we'll be back to put in our background and see what else we need to tighten up.